This is a slight variant of the classic Steelhead Coachman, which is an adaptation of course, the classic Coachman. Small, dark, sparse. It's a fantastic fly for summer steelhead on many high desert rivers like the Snake, Clearwater, Grand Ronde. The only reason I say it's a variant is because, frankly, there are some materials that are used for this pattern that I just didn't have, so I made do. I'm tying on a size 8 steelhead hook, Daiichi 2441. Pinch the barb, put it in the vise. For thread, I'm using fluorescent orange Vivus in 210 denier. If I had 140 on hand, that's probably what I would be going with, but making some lemonade. For the butt of this fly, I'm going to use some holographic tinsel. I'm spinning the bobbin counterclockwise here, just so that thread grabs as I tie that tinsel in. As you can see, I'm starting my wraps right in front of the hook point. Like I said, this is going to be a pretty sparse fly, so we don't need to go all the way back to the hook bend. Had I my druthers, I would be tying this on a curved shank hook, but again, didn't have any on hand. Make the butt out of the hollow tinsel, and then this is where you would use golden pheasant crest, but again, don't have any. So I'm just using some golden pheasant fibers, tying them in, and putting some good pressure down so that they flare upward. For the rib of this fly, I'm going to use some silver French tinsel. Tie it in, secure it right in front of your tail. The body of this fly is going to be made of Peacock Curl. Take 2 long strands and kind of rub your fingers over them to kind of bind them together and tie them in. Because Peacock Curl is so delicate, I typically like to start without using hackle pliers. I find if you have hackle pliers on the end of these fibers, you can break them pretty consistently if you're as clumsy as I am. So I start by wrapping them by hand very delicately. As I get down toward the end of the curl fibers, it gets a little bit trickier to keep a hold of them. So I'm going to reach for my hackle pliers and very clumsily grasp those 2 fibers together, keeping my thread out of the way. I finish wrapping to just behind the hook eye. Take your thread, tie them in good and tight, and snip off the excess. It's pretty important when you rib this fly to rotate your tinsel in the opposite direction as you've done your Peacock Curl. It'll help the durability. Because this tinsel is pretty large, if I had small, that's probably what I prefer to be using. I'm taking only about 4 wraps up the hook and snipping it off close because I really want that peacock to be visible. For a hackle, I'm using hen neck. Now, I really did not have the pick of the litter with my feathers, so this one's a little mangled, but it'll do the job. Tie it in, and as you can see here, I've made a little bit of a mess at the front of my fly, so I'm going to try to clean that up a little bit. Hen neck has a natural curvature to it, but we really want those fibers to be splayed back. So if you wet your fingers and pull the fibers back as you wrap, that can do the trick. But if you have a good clean feather, you should be able to use the natural curvature of it to achieve that effect without as much trouble as I'm having here. Secure your feather, and if you want to, you can take a little bodkin or a brush and really just treat the fly a little bit, but it's certainly not necessary. This is probably a little denser than I would like to be. Could have sworn I had some calf tail lying around, which is what we would use for this fly, but instead I'm using some bucktail. The underside of a bucktail is a pretty good substitute. Keeping it sparse and keeping the length of that wing a little bit longer than my hackle fibers, tie it into the top of the shank. At this point you should have a nice big fluorescent orange head, and you can whip finish off, snip your tying thread, and treat it with a little bit of UV or super glue or whatever you want to do to finish it off. And there you have it. Basically a Steelhead Coachman with a couple of substituted materials. While I definitely love tying big gaudy intruders with synthetic materials, there's something really, really cool about an old classic summer steelhead fly, which this most certainly is, the Steelhead Coachman. If you care deeply for the Snake, Grand Ronde, or Clearwater rivers and the fish that live there, help us restore them. Check out our page at tu.org/Lower Snake and learn more about why we need to remove the lower 4 Snake River dams to help restore salmon and steelhead, and how you can help.